Welcome to the Stacey Salyer Show, the podcast for property management leaders ready to think bigger about growth. I'm Stacey Salyer and the only acquisition strategist in this industry who sat on all sides of the M&A table. I've been the buyer, acquiring a 370-door competitor during COVID using seller financing. I've been the seller, building and exiting a 7-figure business. And I've been the corporate evaluator as director of acquisitions, assessing over hundreds of companies nationally. That means I know exactly what you're thinking, what you're missing, and what actually works when it comes to buying and integrating in this space. On this show, we dig into acquisitions as a real business tool, not luck, not someday. You'll learn positioning, strategy, numbers, and integration from someone who's actually done it all. Let's go. Well, welcome back, my friends, to the Stacey Salyer Show, where we talk about buying and selling property management companies. And today I have a wonderful guest on with me. He also hosts his own show, which we will talk about. But I wanted to have him on to talk about how he has built his brand and built his entire business and what his future brand building goals are and how it can relate to buying or selling your property management company. So welcome, Mark Ainley from Chicago.
Thank you. You said I'm wonderful. I appreciate that, but maybe not. So thank you.
You are wonderful. You're cool. Well, yeah, we've gotten to know each other over the last, I think, couple of years through our good friend Pablo Gonzalez.
Yep. Yeah. It's been nice.
Yeah. I think you were at the same content dinner I was at. Was that in Colorado?
Yeah, that was in Colorado. Yep.
I
got to ride the scooter there that night. That was a good time. That was a fun trip.
I did not ride a scooter, which is good. I have ridden them, but not that night. So awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me and excited to jump in.
Let's do it. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So when we were chatting, we were talking about how we could get together and kind of talk about what you've done in your business and built it up. I know that you've looked at acquiring some companies and you haven't had any actually come to fruition, but we thought it'd be kind of cool to talk about how you've built up your brand, what you've done for that, and then some of your future plans for that, and how that could relate to building your business for sale, right?
Yeah, exactly. I've always had, there's a book out there, Build to Sell, I think I read at some point, but the concept of setting things up where you can step away at any given point, and it's down to even the silly things of the value of your URL or not changing out your URL because there's value in it if someone else ever wants to buy it. Those are things that, like I said, we haven't been able to acquire one yet, but those things I'm looking at when I'm trying to consider options for buying somebody. So that brand value, I think, goes a very long way, and you'll get far more than if someone's just buying out your contracts.
No, I agree. And I think I've been in property management for 22 years. How long have you been in?
I just right around the same time. Okay. September will be 23. So we're both at the same path there.
Yeah, we're both at the same property management age, which really, I think 22, 23 years equals 50.
Oh, yeah, for million. Sure. Forget dog years, it's property management years.
I know. So, yeah, and I will say, I think in property management, and I have said this before, and when I owned my property management company, I will even raise my hand and say, I was not really good at marketing. I thought I knew marketing, but once I exited and I started this new adventure, I realized I didn't really know much about marketing, and I didn't really know even how to do it. So I'd love to kind of talk about how you've been able to really build an amazing brand in your market and kind of how that transpired. So if you want to kind of take us back, how'd you do it?
Yeah, well, the first thing I'll say to your comment is, if anything anyone listening here has as a competitive advantage is more than likely the other property managers in your town or city are not good at marketing. And it's maybe good or bad is not the right word, but it's more of focus. They just don't put the time and energy into it. The whole departmentalizing sales and marketing was something that only started getting talked about at the PM Grow Summits back in 2018-19. So prior to that, no one, it wasn't even a phrase. So I've always looked at marketing as my competitive advantage over everyone else in my market that's too busy to think about it. And the other big competitive advantage is everyone else is always afraid to get on camera. So if you could just get on camera a little more and be a little less afraid, it goes so far of the business you're going to attract or whatever your marketing department will ultimately be built out as.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that's where I thought, if I just build up my Google reviews, I'm going to get all the referrals. And I did. I actually got quite a few Google reviews. I was organically in the top 3 and I had the realtor referrals. but really that wasn't marketing. So do you want to take us back? Because you've been in the business like almost 23 years. So kind of how did you start? And did you start like back then, or was this like 2017, 18?
So the reality of it is we started in 2003 and we were trying to be a brokerage company, and we never were. Definitely the word property management wasn't even like really a thing, and there wasn't even really property management companies back then, or at least in my market.
Right.
And I definitely had no clue what NARPM was, that there's actually a whole world of property managers out there. And our goal was to sell houses, but we were selling a lot of houses to investors, and those investors started asking, like, hey, man, you want to handle collecting the rent, or you want to be the landlord? I remember one guy asked me, you want to be the landlord for me? The word property management wasn't even really fully in existence in people's vocabulary here, or at least around here. And the first couple of contracts we took were really more of a means to an end. I remember the first one, it's like, all right, I don't know if that guy comes on $50, I get a water cooler now for the office. That'll cover that. And all I got to do is collect some rent. No, the first one I took on, I remember the second day I got a call basically saying, what the F, you took on Paul's property, but you didn't take on our properties, because there was somebody else that was kind of in the same circle that I said no for it felt like a really long time, but 6 months, a year of just saying, no, we don't do that. Because going back even a couple of years prior, I bought my first investment property, and I made all the horrible mistakes. I took the sad story, a single mom that I felt bad for because it related to, my mom was single. Like if someone just gave her a break, it's the same idea. And I took partial security deposit, and it was horrible. I made every mistake that I speak to everybody not to do these days, and ultimately filed for eviction and did a modern day cash for keys. So at that point, I remember just like almost walking away like, yes, I'm done. I'm just going to go buy properties, or I'm just going to go and sell properties, sell these problems to other people. I'm not going to deal with it. I'll take the commission, and that's how I'll make my money. And so I fought it for a while, getting back into it. And leasing properties was really hard before the crash, at least here in the Midwest, because you could literally buy a property with less of a down payment than you could a security deposit. We all hear the stories of buying a property and walking away. And actually, I remember like having, like, I'd write in the contract, so I'd try walking away with $10,000, $12,000, $13,000 from these properties I was buying. They're all investments, but the owner occupants could do the same thing with these 80-20 loans. So it was really hard to actually even lease up properties, and rents are really low. So if you were doing a percentage of a management fee, that was kind of tough you're charging people 12, 13%. So it turned into a flat fee. But market crash, we started investing between 08, 18, bought damn near 500 units, rehabbed them, fixed them, sold some of them, kept the management, but did all that. But in the meantime, the property management company kept growing. And I remember it was a day in 2014, and my partners, we hired a couple people along the way, and we're just kind of growing in the background as we're doing all these rehabs. And my partners, everyone's pissed. Everyone's frustrated. Everyone's overwhelmed. What's going on? I'm like, Brian, man, we managed 250 units in a 500,000 square feet of commercial space. That was right when I learned about process. We don't have a process in place. We don't have anything documented. And I remember that was kind of like the moment, wow, we kind of have a company here, and we should probably do something with that. And I remember it was a week before, a week later, I Googled up property management in the town we were in. And the only company that came up was a real estate broker in my office doing property management on the side that I didn't even know about. So,
oh my God, that's amazing. So here you have an actual company, and then you have a real estate agent in your office, like just side hustling it. Yep.
And so I'm like, oh man, so that was like my first hint of like, all right, if we could do what we did here without even doing any marketing, wow, there's a pretty big opportunity. So fast forward 3-4 years, we kind of, went through whole bunch of different process type classes and coaches and stuff like that, just trying to get things in place, built the GC Bible of all the processes, started training people and so forth. So went through that iteration, discovered, the funny thing is the guy in my office doing property management, he's the one that actually referred me to NARPM at some point in that journey, and got involved in NARPM, never really did anything with NARPM, and paid the $250, never did anything with it through the logo on our website when we got BMW and all that stuff, but didn't really do anything with that. And it was about 2017. We were reviewing kind of what we're doing on the development side, and we said properties are getting competitive, which based on today, it's crazy. It's harder to get some of these contractors down to these neighborhoods that we're investing in. Maybe our ROI is much better on the property management side if we continue to grow that. So we went back 2018 really full time to the property management company. Went from doubled 3 times basically since then. We had to go back and clean up a bunch of stuff, starting with sure. I think when we did this in 2018, we made everyone sign brand new management agreements because it was some crazy, like 56 different property management agreements. Everyone, if you want to redline my management agreement, I'm like, cool, that's good, that's fine. Just sign, like initial this over here. And it was a mess. It was everything right. that made it impossible to scale. And we unwound all that. And right around that time, we realized how cheap we were if you're going to account for our time and everything we were giving. So went through that whole drill of if we raise prices, everyone's going to fire us. And went through, we've raised price on everyone. And only a couple people fired us, which were the two people that we wanted to fire us. We were very grateful. Right. And you know how that goes. You take 6 months to send it out, that new management agreement, and 6 hours later, like, oh shit, no one even cares. No one even notices. So just kind of continue on and growing and into the path we're at. And it was around 2019 where I say it half sad, half laughing, but our partners came together like, Mark, you just got to get out of the operation side of things if we want to scale this. And a lot of it was I just cared so much about customer service, and to solve a problem, I would create 5 other problems in the organization and break process and all that. So I go figure out the sales and marketing thing. And that's ultimately how I came in there. Now, I'll tell you the truth. The first year after I got booted, I kind of looked for like a silver bullet of, all right, who can I call and hire? I remember talking to Jordan Wela and stuff like that. Like, who will come in property management, marketing in a box type stuff. So,
right.
But yeah, that was kind of our journey to then, and it's kind of evolved since.
Okay. And so, I mean, you obviously have your podcast, and I know that's like highly rated and it's very popular, and you've done other marketing, but how did you get started? Did you like go to any classes? I think when we were talking offline, you mentioned Hormozi. So yeah, I'd love to know kind of more about that.
Yeah. I mean, unlike when we started the property management business, there's so much online. I mean, there's even more online. There's so much, if anything, the bigger problem now is like what's crap and what's good online. Yeah. But I didn't have to guess anymore. I actually could read the books. But along the way, when I was looking for that silver bullet, I just started doing the thing. I just started going after the Google reviews. And to me, in my mind, I'm still like this, is all right, how can I get enough Google reviews to stay so far ahead that anyone that starts a business tomorrow won't want to try catching up? Or it'll be a deterrent to them wanting to compete. Even my colleagues, like, all right, we have 10 times more. I don't want them to say, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and beat Mark because they're too far ahead. And then I started just Googling us and figuring out our reputation and started trying to figure out how I could get interviewed more. And I just started doing the thing of, all right, what does this look like? And ultimately it turned into, because I started off with, man, you got to spend money on marketing and you might not know if you're going to get a return on it, or you're not sure if that guy that called is even from that $10,000 campaign you just spent. So that always frustrated me about marketing. But what that forced us to do is be very guerrilla marketing approach, just do more volume. If you look at our marketing budget, even today for 2026, I think our marketing budget, when you back out labor, is only like $75,000, $80,000. And a lot of it is manpower and emails and reps and so forth. So, yeah.
Okay. So now I'm sure somebody listening to this, especially those that don't do any sort of like purposeful marketing, just heard you say our budget is only $75,000 or $80,000. Is that correct?
Yeah.
For this year. So I'm sure most people listening are like, wait, what? He said $75,000 is his budget for marketing. So can you mind breaking down like what exactly that entails? Like what does that go to?
Yeah, it's not even that much. It's not even that crazy. So, we are, PMW is a partner we've worked with for a long time, and we're in their market leader, I think is what you call it, program. So a chunk of that goes to that. We spend, one of our largest paid channels is just doing Google ads, which we're doing right now with Geek Leads. And then we have all these different supporting propertymanager.com, just all these different kind of pay to play things. But that's not where a lot of our juice comes from. A lot of our juice comes from the SEO side. And now more than ever, it's just what do we got to do? What do we got to put out there to be found through different LMN searches? So a lot of that ends up being just spending X amount of hours a week figuring out what the best content is to put out there that's actually interesting, and then figuring out how to distribute that 100 different ways. So, but again, that's not the expensive part. And that $75,000 ends up being, all right, $700 a month for MailChimp because we need a way to get the stuff out there. It ends up being, we have a couple editors that just make sure they edit our stuff. That's less of an issue now these days, but it ends up just being these tools for trying to create this content and get it out there. The services that create the clips from the podcast and so forth. So a lot of the spend ends up being just kind of supporting the guerrilla efforts.
Right. Okay. And so do you mind kind of like breaking down, like, so sounds like you're probably doing a newsletter. I mean, obviously a podcast. Are you using social media, like all the different platforms, or what are you doing, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I know if I was listening to this, I'd be curious what my team is made up of. So I'm in charge of sales and marketing. And on my team is my BDM, which really has nothing to do with marketing. I have a onboarding property manager that basically carries them through the first 60 days, almost like a white glove service. Mm-hmm. I have an onboarding remote team member. And on the marketing side, I have a remote team member, Javier, who's in Mexico City. He's been with me for 5 years. And I just hired literally this week, I keep calling him a local Javier. So a marketing guy here that's boots on the ground here. So that's my team. But up until this point, it was really just me and Javier that's done all of this on the marketing side. So me and one RTM, which my point of bringing that up is you don't need a massive marketing team to be effective. You just need to make sure you're effective.
Right. Do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you know kind of what to start with, or did you just kind of like shotgun the approach?
I had no clue. So there's, and I think it was really was finding my own style or my comfort level of how we want to approach things. And I think that's unique for everybody. So we're very heavy. There's two things we got going for us in our market when it comes to us property management. It's one, it's very heavy investor. And it's very heavy regulated. You can appreciate that from where you're from.
Yes, I can. Coming from Washington State, absolutely.
So those two create unlimited amounts of content that you could crank out. This weekend we put out 5 articles, and 4 of them had to do with regulation. The 5th one was we tied some article to World Cup and how we passed on it here in Chicago was the benefit to real estate investors for all the tax money that we've spent. But we have unlimited content for this, so it's huge. So anyone here in the Midwest, or even the Southeast, just has so much content you create. And us just being able to crank that out. And I think it was a call out to Pablo here. It was a couple years ago. I met him at the original conference at Amelia Island. And coincidentally, he had a client up here in Chicago that it all kind of just came together perfectly. I had him on our podcast. He was going to work an event for them. And we kind of came together and it worked out good. And he brought me as a gift when he came up to Chicago. What's his name? What's the marketer? His favorite guy. I'm drawing a blank. Little short guy from New Jersey that loves the Jets.
I won't remember. I'm horrible.
Vandercheck.
Oh, Gary V?
Gary V.
Oh, yeah, Gary V. Everybody loves Gary V. And I just love that Gary V drops the F-bomb all the time. I'm like, I aspire to be that.
So I do too. I'm always the one left on our podcast, the only guy swearing. So then I just look like the raw.
I know, same. One. Yeah.
But he brought a book, and Gary V's just popular culture out there. But I read his book, and I started following him online, and something that hit me with Gary V is everything's free. So you could put the effort into putting one article together, making one 6-minute video, and then it's unlimited. You could publish it 80 different ways on 100 different sites. Like it's crazy. And that was what hit me. Is okay. And then it's like you have this email list. Like you could bombard them 4 times a week. I started then. I also signed up to Neil Patel, who's a marketer that I like to follow.
I follow Neil Patel too. Mm-hmm.
And he does bigger business, but the one thing I realized with him is he sends me an email every damn day. And I'm actually interested in it. And I realized, I'm like, man, we have such a benefit in real estate that real estate's pretty sexy. If you sold tires or windshield wipers, like you can't bombard your clients every day with tire tread emails, but you can with real estate investing and what's going on in the market and what's happening in your neighborhood and leasing and all that stuff. There's just so many different angles. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to start emailing people more frequently. And if people start opting out, then I know I'm emailing too much. So we now email 4 times a week.
Do you really? Okay.
Yeah, so we email them 4 times a week, plus our lead simple, we're hitting them every 5 days. So we sent out just over 1 million emails last month. So
okay.
And I know that only because I got the notice from MailChimp that we had to go to a different plan because of it.
Okay. So I want to repeat that for all of the PMC owners listening. You email people 4 times a week, plus then you have people on your drip campaign for through Lead Simple for prospective new clients.
Those go every 5 days, which all those people are also on the MailChimp. So the people in Lead Simple, the people that have hope or haven't opted out, they end up getting basically 5 emails a week. Now, if I was listening, I'd be curious on what those 5 emails are, right? So on Tuesday and Saturday, it's just basically an email that makes it look like it's coming from me. It's just it's not formatted. It just looks like a general email. My goal is to make it look like a personalized email as much as possible. And it ties back to some sort of article we wrote or a podcast episode that we did that hopefully is something they'd be interested in. And then on Thursday, we send out the email of the new podcast that dropped. So every Thursday, we have a new episode to drop. And on Monday, we then send out an email of the week before of everything you missed last week. So it's the new articles. So it's basically it's a format of MailChimp where it's the podcast. We do another live show. I do it with Tim Harstead, another property manager. I think he was at the dinner with us that one night.
Yeah,
so we do a Chicago Landlord Secrets every Thursday or Friday. We record it. So that recording and then whatever articles, and then obviously a tie into maybe refer us or if you want rental analysis tool, that's our biggest tool to kind of get people to jump in. But that's what we do. So it ends up that's you do it 4 times a week. And now the other thing is our email list. We have about 40,000 people on that list.
Wow.
And that list is made up of a couple things. It's everyone that's came through Lead Simple through both podcast giveaways or GC giveaways. That is a mix of, then I have a couple real estate brokers we swap email lists on. And then there's a tool out there, and maybe we can put it in the show notes, but there's a tool out there that you could go and scrape Instagram for emails. So there's a couple of people with 40, 50,000 followers here in Chicago that I just know these people are real estate investors. So, and you can scrape them, and not everyone has an email tied to their Instagram account, but you get the ones that do it, and it was relatively inexpensive. And then the other thing we just started doing is every Friday, we pull every new listing in the Chicago metro area. And there's usually about 4,000 listings. And we take the little MLS short, anyone that's a realtor, you could pull the different template and you print it to a PDF. It might be 200-300 pages or whatever. And then just throw it in Claude and say, please pull out the emails on that. Now, we get 400 or 500 new emails for new agents listing a week. So that's just another way we add it. So we're pretty lucky here in Chicago. You have 23,000 real estate agents, which is another bulk chunk of that list as well, too.
Wow. That's impressive. That's a really big email list. And I think a lot of, again, I didn't even realize this in property management, but now I do, because I basically consider my business as like online B2B. And so my business is my email list, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, the marketing piece. I mean, I'm only sending out like 2 emails a week unless I'm running some sort of campaign, then I'll send out a few extras. But yeah, that's awesome. 4 emails plus the lead simple. That's really impressive.
But
so
it's all in advance though. So for the overwhelm, so it ends up being, I'll do 2 months worth of emails up front based on the content I created the previous 2 months.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
it's not like it's somewhat evergreen content, or at least relative content within the previous 6 months. But then you're done. Same with the lead simple. You add 2 or 3 months worth of relevant content, and then you're done. It's just kind of set and forget. So it's not every week I'm sitting there like, oh no, it's Thursday, I didn't get these for you. Like it's all pre-planned in that sense. No, everything I'm saying, I make it sound so easy. It took me 5-6 years to get to this point to realize how easy this could be. So anyone listening, if anything, there's so much stuff I learned along the way that just, I did something with Jeremy Pound one time. It was, and I think this recording is still available on Crane, I think, or something like that. But it's 18 lessons in 8 years or something like that. But it was everything of if I had to start over type question.
Right. Yeah, I think it's important too to highlight. Usually most people start with one thing and then you add a few more layers and then it just keeps compounding, right, over time. And then it just becomes consistent. So are you doing all the writing yourself, or do you have your team also help you, or are you mostly just using Claude with your ideas?
I use Claude, and then, but I think what's so important is there's obviously the body, the message of it, but what's important to me is the tone comes from me, which totally contradicts what we talk about of being the face of the company. But right now, that's kind of where we're at, and I have a tone. People are familiar with my tone through the podcast and just my network. So as long as it's from my tone and it's referring to something that we want, it's pretty easy to kind of create a few months worth of emails in a few hours, a couple hours even.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, obviously you've built a really good solid foundation on your brand. You're at, how many doors are you managing? About
1,500.
1,500. Okay. Which is that's a very sizable company. And do you have specific growth goals?
Yes. Our BHAG is 10,000 doors in 10 years.
10,000. Okay.
And I think we're 7 years into it. I just want to keep growing. It's funny, as an entrepreneur, like, I don't care, just grow. And like when everyone's, you got to put on paper what you want to grow to. It's like, all right, listen, we'll put 10,000 there, but if we get this, if we get 7,500 out of it, like I'm just as happy. So
yeah, it's funny when I meet with people because they're like, I just want to grow, and they'll throw out a number like 10,000. I'm like, how do you come up with that number? It just sounded good. Like, okay, that's cool.
I think it ends up for us. I think that way, but ultimately, if I'm going to plan and as far as leads and backing into, when you have 1,500 doors, if we have a 10% churn, which is a little higher than that, you got to get 200 doors just to break even. So do I have enough leads to get 200 doors and keep even growing on top of that? So that becomes the challenge that a lot of people start not be able to hit the break-even point. And all these roll-ups, I think, have felt that pain of like, all right, you got 13,000 units. And if you have 10% churn, which most of them have higher than that, you got to bring on 2,600 doors just to break even.
Right. Yep. That is definitely a math game for sure. I know Ian Joseph and I talked about that when he was on my show, and kind of how that it kind of becomes that double-edged sword when you're out acquiring, because now all of a sudden you're like, oh, now I need to either bring them on door by door or acquire just to stay net bigger amount. So are you looking at also acquiring? I mean, do you feel like by building a really strong brand in your market, you think you'd be able to go out and convince somebody to sell their book of business to you?
Yeah. Like I was saying before, we've had a couple of people approach us and they end up being just not profitable enough where we are as a company. And I think this is important for anyone out there is we're probably one of the more expensive companies in Chicago. Now that just means that we have to add more value to the clients and they have to feel safer. And I have vendors I do business with. I know you're a little more, but I know I trust you're going to get it done. Same concept. So be able to do that is something that kind of helps that game. But when I go to acquire somebody or look at somebody and they're not at that point, some of these companies we look at buying, we'd have to double their clients' RPU just to get it close to what our average might be. And ultimately, when you go to buy, then you just have that churn risk after a year.
Right, for sure. Yeah, and that is important. Have you guys kind of worked out like what I call the buy box as far as what you are looking for to buy, or?
Yeah, definitely. And if anything, what I've been working with we don't have NARPM here in Chicago, and I started a group, just Chicago property managers, and we call it Best Practice Group, but there's about 25 of us in there, and we meet once a month and do similar things that NARPM group meetups would do. But if anything, my mindset is always like any of these people I could be merging with or buying with. That's kind of my goal of when we meet and trying to add value, because we're all competitors in a way. Now, the one benefit is we're a huge market, and some of us have our own little niches inside the market, which actually makes good referral partners. But a handful of us are all direct competitors. We literally share best practices on here, and then we turn around and we compete on a deal down the street. So, but when I am talking to them and giving them value or information, it's one, to raise the whole bar of the industry here in Chicago. And at the same time, if you start charging that fee, then that makes you more profitable. And then hopefully someday if we're going to buy you, it'll give us more of the opportunity to buy you. So.
Yep. Yeah. No, I love that. Yeah. I think that's a good strategy for sure. I mean, the better we can make the industry for all, for sure. And then it could be a future acquisition, and it'd be better acquisition than those that aren't charging enough.
Well, that's how the NARPM accounting standards really kind of came to place. It's, hey, we got to make sure if we could all do better and track our numbers better and know if we're profitable or not, we can all help each other buy, sell, and merge.
Yeah, absolutely. That's cool. So I know you've talked a lot about like kind of how you built your brand. I mean, it's huge. Your podcast, I know, has a great following. So what are you kind of working on for future? Because you want to grow to 10,000 doors, which would that's going to change your company and change probably your role and everybody else's. And then for you, everybody's building their business to sell. I mean, because we're not going to be able to have it forever. So what do you kind of see for your future goals, like for your brand?
Well, I think you mentioned, I went to the Hormozi thing a couple years ago, and a big talk about that was talking about risks that companies have or what makes them valuable and enterprise value. Your total speak. And the big thing that kind of I took home from that was really the key man risk. And the weird thing is the key man risk that we have in this company isn't even really probably operational. My partner, CEO Cliff, like no one really knows him. He doesn't talk to owners. He's definitely not generating referrals or anything like that. So we recovered on that somewhat, but then it ends up being the face of the company. And I think what I realized here in the last 6 months was I don't know if I could especially if I'm talking about do more. I don't think I could take my face off more, but what I could do is get other people involved and start getting other people on camera. I might do the same amount of reps, but now if someone else is doing 20% of the reps I'm doing now, it's it kind of do that in baby steps over the next couple of years of how do I pull myself out of that. And I think with the podcast and all that stuff, like it'll be me until it's not, I guess. And I think that'll be one of those things that it's just the podcast won't exist in at some point. So just trying to figure out how to have less key man risk of that. Now, I don't think people hire or fire us based on me or do my marketing, but there's a perception there to any buyer that comes in. And we went through a drill last year. We looked at a company that was looking to potentially buy us. And I think as an operator, you kind of entertain those conversations every so often, more so just to kind of understand the environment. I'm sure you can speak to that more than I can. But going through that, there's still that perception of, oh, well, if Mark leaves, he's got a following or people listen to his podcast and hire you. So there ends up being a perception more so than actually a reality too, that I have to just kind of play with that in the upcoming years of figuring out how to make sure that's not going to hurt us financially someday when we choose to exit.
Yeah, no, I think you're onto something for sure. I mean, you've built a great brand and you have way more marketing than probably 99.9% of most property management companies in the US. But I can see where, because you've built that, then maybe starting to incorporate other key team members and just kind of make it more of a collective, more about the company versus you specifically would probably be good and probably make you way more valuable. In fact, I mean, probably way more valuable than your competitors.
Yeah, I've gotten away. I say gotten away with it because I do think we run pretty lean. Having just a remote team member is really I mean, he's helped. He's done everything to get me to this point with me. And I think the person local here now being able to get, it's not me going around and taking videos of everyone else in the office or getting someone to say something in a testimonial, or a client comes in and kind of throwing them off in the corner and getting some feedback from them. I think him being around the office will help us, even just for down from doing the aerial footage of our office to put on our website. That's no longer Mark's face. So just stuff like that. It was kind of my thought process of one of the many benefits of actually investing in having somebody local.
That's cool. And so do you have team members who are willing to get on camera with you?
Yeah. I don't know if they're necessarily because they want to or because they think their job depends on it. I don't say anything like that, but I have some of them that will. So and like anything, the people that are willing to, you push them to do more, and the other people that they don't have to. It's similar to AI right now. You got plenty of people that want more AI. Yeah. And you got other people that are like, so I've just pushed the people that want to do more with AI to kind of help them leverage their own skills.
Okay. No, that's cool. Yeah, I think it's a hard first step, I think, because I know even back when I started creating the talking head videos, right? Oh my God. I was like, oh, it was painful to edit them. And now it's like, I don't even care. And now I just, in fact, I was in Arizona last week with Jen Rulins, Hold It with PM Jen. And it literally is natural to us now where we're like, okay, we're out to dinner. Let's set up our phone. We need to record ourselves drinking and eating. I mean, that's literally now kind of like where our brain goes. And yeah, it's just after time, you just kind of get used to it, right?
Well, I think for me personally, it was no one else really cares that you're doing it or that you're not doing it or you're doing it. And if you don't do it, it's not going to help you. If you do it, there's a good chance it could help you. So it's been kind of and that could go for anybody. Like, I think the hardest thing that people go through is actually there's kind of the two iterations. There's actually getting in front of the camera. And then it goes hitting submit or post.
Yes.
And those two, if you could close the gap on that, where now it becomes shorter. I remember I hired somebody I started my own like personal Instagram page because I realized one thing that was bothering me was like our GC page, like it sucked. There was a bunch of Canvas like of no one cared about. Like, so I'm like, all right, we need some interaction. And I opened a page and I threw a video out there and it got on first post more likes than the last 2 years worth of Canva posts on GC. I'm like, yep, okay, there's something here. So I'm like, that was a pain in the butt. That was horrible for me to do, to get that recorded and posted. So I'll hire somebody. I hired somebody and I was confident what they could do, their skills, but they just were too expensive and it wasn't scalable for me. It was way too much money. And it wasn't until one day I had a guy probably 10 years younger than me, came in, did the podcast with us, took a couple pictures in the podcast room and then literally threw it. And he was on Instagram like in 30 seconds. I'm like, man, I pay someone like $200 a post, like almost if you really break it down to do that. And that afternoon I went and said, hey, listen, I'm putting my notice in, like, I'm going to figure this out myself. But it was like, I record stuff and I have to send it to her and then she sent it back. And then she like for approval, I'm like, no, we can't do this. We need to reduce the friction of content and posting it. So
that's cool. So are you doing your own social media then? You're handling it on your own?
For my page, for the most part, I do. And then I collaborate with the other pages and Instagram, and then LinkedIn. I've been doing most of that stuff on there as well too. But I just kind of like doing that. And I kind of have a system. I like the whole, every morning, I part of my morning routine after the gym is I do my Duolingo, which I'm on day like 920 for Spanish. And I don't have to say anything. And then I post something on Instagram, which goes to Facebook, and then I copy it to TikTok. And so that's like my daily post for the day that I get out there right early on personalized. So.
Yep. Yeah. Same. I actually do all my own social media as well. I just find it kind of easier and I just do it when I'm feeling creative. Sometimes I'll pre-do quite a few and I'll schedule them and do it. Or sometimes it might just be every day. But yeah, and then same on LinkedIn, I'll get on and just do my own. Awesome. Well, yeah, I think this was really helpful. And I think I do like to have a variety of people on my show to kind of talk about like how they built their business, like what their plans are. I think you have a really unique thing in your market as far as building your business and especially like building it as an asset. I think you're on the right track for sure as far as incorporating your entire team or company into the marketing as you grow. What else do you have going on that you'd like to share before we wrap up?
Well, like I said, I try to run the company as we're always looking to buy someone or we might always get bought. So if you kind of keep that mindset, you keep some of your priorities straight. And I think the marketing side of things can be done very lean. So anyone that thinks they don't got the budget, either A, you do, or B, maybe you got to charge a little more like we had to go back and do to some of our clients. So.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, yeah. Well, hopefully everyone listening today took at least one thing away from this. And I would say, even Mark, I'm sure you'd agree to this, just start with one thing, one platform, and then just keep going, keep building, right?
Yeah, for sure. And so much of that even if you're doing one platform, it's all duplicatable. I mean, if you really look across our stuff, like, you see a lot of the same stuff, the same really end goal or same call to action. It's just put in different ways in different places. So you don't have to post on 7 different socials. You don't have to create 7 different pieces of content. You really have one, and then 2 weeks later, use the same piece again. So it's super doable. It just takes someone to guide it. So.
Yeah.
And the other thing, there's so much help remotely now that have experience. I come across people all the time when we're looking for other roles in the company. Sometimes I'll help out in our recruiting department for remote talent. And there's so many people that have fairly good marketing skills.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, no, that's really great advice for sure. So yeah, thank you for sharing. Well, is there anything, I'd love to shout out your podcast so people can follow if they aren't already. So
Yeah, sure.
what is it? Where do we find you?
All right, straightupchicagoinvestor.com. And if you want to go on my website and you download a rental analysis or something like that, you put your information in. And not because I want to give you that tool, but now you can just get everything. You can at least see what we're doing in your inbox, and you can see exactly what we're doing. And if you think it's good, then copy it. Everything's copied.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's awesome. That is a gift that you're giving to all the people listening. So yeah. And all your information will be in the show notes. So if you go to your website, do a download of some sort, then you're going to be on the email list, and then you can see, here's what goes out, take a look at it, tailor something to your own self and your market. And there you go. Now you're in the step in the right direction. So, well, thank you again for coming on my show. I really, really appreciate it. Everybody go listen to Straight Up Investor Chicago.
Straight Up Chicago Investor.
Straight Up Chicago Investor. And
you get the same Google results either way. So.
Okay, good. Yeah. You're good. I'm glad I didn't totally butcher it for you. Yeah. And thank you so much for your time today. And I really appreciate you.
I love what you're doing for this industry. So it's a pleasure to be out here. I appreciate you inviting me.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you soon. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Stacey.
Thanks for listening to the Stacey Salyer Show. Here's the deal. You can read about acquisitions anywhere, but you can't learn acquisitions from someone who's done it the way I have. As a buyer, a seller, and from the corporate side, evaluating hundreds of companies. That's why I need you to subscribe and share this with someone in your network who needs to hear it. And if this episode landed, leave a 5-star review. It's how more PM owners find the only acquisition expertise in the space that comes from all sides of the table. And while you're at it, grab my acquisition readiness checklist on my website at staceysalyer.com. Then, when you're ready to move from growth thinking to growth building, explore the Built to Acquire program. Don't leave it on the table. See you on the next episode.